Hello again, glad to have you back for another unit review of AP Psychology curriculum. Specifically for today, we'll be focusing on the second half of Unit 8, which is the treatment of clinical psychology. As a brief intro, this portion of the unit focuses on the aspects and strategies which are quite interconnected with the psychological approach in Unit 1 to treat a variety of disordered behaviors. With this in mind, let's jump in starting with the psychoanalytic. Inferring from its definition as a psychological approach, its strategy in treating disorder is rooted in the concept of insight. Simply put, insight into the cause of the problem is the key to eliminating the problem. First developed by Freud, psychoanalysis examines repressions from the past to understand the unconscious perspective of the problem. A common tool for this is known as free association, a process involving the patient reporting any thoughts and ideas that come into mind. In search for a pattern can hint at clues of the unconscious conflict. Another important component of this therapy is the lack of or attachment of the therapist to encourage transference, in which the patient shifts thoughts and feelings about a certain thing onto the therapist. On the other hand, counter-transference is the act of the therapist transferring his or her feelings onto the patient. On to the next approach. Humanistic therapy takes a quite different route in which the individual, instead of viewed as a patient, is actually viewed as more of a client. Invented by Carl Rogers, this so-called client-centered therapy is made from the client's present perception of reality instead of their unconsciousness. Moreover, the ultimate goal of this method is to help clients realize their full potential through self-actualization, one of the main key terms in the field of humanistic psychology. To better achieve this, the therapist, in actuality, opens up to the client and acts as an active listener. Such a concept is referred to as genuineness. Another crucial concept mentioned in previous chapters was unconditional positive regard, a demonstration of complete support and acceptance of a person no matter what the person says or does to promote a state of unconditional self-worth. Lastly, the final key in this therapy is accurate empathic understanding, or the therapist's ability to view the world through the eyes of the client. Again, something critical to bridge the connection and communication between the therapist and the client. Moving on to behavioral therapy approach, which is a short-term process as the school of thought rejects the idea of a deep underlying causal problem like unconsciousness. Instead, it is believed that disordered behavior is both the problem and the symptoms, which can be altered using specific techniques with clearly defined methods. For instance, a technique of counter-conditioning is used, which, of course, as its name suggests, involves replacing a response to a given stimulus with another better response. As a quick example, to fix the overconsumption of alcohol, the positive feeling generated when drinking are often replaced instead of a new negative feeling concerning alcohol. To illustrate, counter-conditioning can be done in various fashions. First is the use of aversion therapy, where an aversive stimulus is repeatedly paired up with the behavior that discourages the patient from continuing such behavior. Continuing with the alcohol example, the therapist might implement a source of punishment whenever the patient drinks. Secondly is a method of systematic desensitization, which involves replacing one response with another response, like replacing anxiety with relaxation. To accomplish this, a hierarchical set of mental images related to the stressful stimulus is constructed in a way that the image's anxiety-inducingness actually gradually increases. The patient would then learn methods of deep relaxation, which can be then practiced when exposed to anxiety-inducing scenes until he or she can interact without experiencing anxiety. Some other form of behavioral therapy involve extinction procedures to weaken maladaptive responses, which can be accomplished through flooding, a procedure in which the patient is actually exposed to the fear like a spider. While this might sound counterintuitive and as it produces more stress, the resulting encounter without signs of negative consequences actually allows the patient to realize that the situation is not in fact dangerous. A similar procedure where the disruptive stimuli are imagined instead of being confronted is known as implosion. Behavioral contracting, a related approach to operant conditioning, can also be used. A contract must be agreed upon by both the therapist and the patient. stating that the patient must act in a certain fashion, while the therapist must provide stated rewards if the patient actually achieves what's written on the contract. Last but not least is the therapeutic approach for modeling based on Bandura's social learning theory, which involves the patient watching someone act in a certain manner and receive an award. The client will then be disposed to imitate that behavior. Moving on. Cognitive therapy is next up on the list, which is an approach that heavily relies on changing cognition or how one thinks. Formulated by Albert Ellis, one such approach is rational emotive behavior therapy, or REBT for short. REBT aims to alter the maladaptive thought process and emotional response by confronting irrational thought directly. In a more straightforward manner, the patient is told that his or her thinking is incorrect and why. A common example of this is the thought that I always have to be perfect in everything I do, or other people's opinions are crucial to my happiness. In addition, cognitive therapy is another method formulated by Aaron Beck, in which the focus is on maladaptive schemas, or the mental framework that helps us organize, process, and store information. He asserted that a negative triad of depression involving a negative view of the self, the world, and the future exists. Maladaptive schemas include arbitrary inference, where people draw conclusions without evidence, and dichotomous thinking, which involves all or none conceptions of situations. A common experience among us students could be something like, oh, if I don't get into a specific college, I must be a complete failure. The final approach is biological therapy, which focuses on the solution of the problem through a medical route. To start, electroconvulsive therapy is a form of such treatment that uses high voltage of electricity to treat major depression. However, the procedure comes with certain risks as it may result in memory loss, so it's actually used as a last resort. Next is the treatment of psychosurgery, with the most known one being prefrontal lobotomy, where part of the frontal lobe is actually cut off. This procedure often left patients in a catatonic state. The biological approach also consists of the use of drugs, called psychopharmacology, involving 4 broad classes of psychotropic, or psychologically active drugs. Firstly, antipsychotics reduce symptoms of schizophrenia by blocking neural receptors for dopamine. However, some side effects are tremors and muscle stiffness. Secondly, antidepressants include 3 types: MAO inhibitors, tricyclics, and selective reuptake inhibitors, which all help treat depression. MAO inhibitors increases amount of serotonin by blocking monoamine oxidase, which is responsible for the breakdown of the neurotransmitters. Tricyclics also help increase serotonin and norepinephrine levels. Selective reuptake inhibitors increase the amount level of neurotransmitters by blocking the reuptake mechanism in which neurotransmitters are recycled. The third kind of antipsychotics is anxiolytics, which depresses the central nervous system and reduce anxiety while increasing feelings of well-being. Lastly, lithium carbonate is used to treat bipolar disorder, but its exact mechanism are actually unknown. Now, we approach the last section of the unit, modes of therapy. While many forms of therapy take place individually with the therapists, group therapy actually exists in which clients with similar experiences actually meet together as an interactive group. A good example of the use of group therapies is substance abuse. A form of group therapy is called the 12-step program, which focuses on a social support system of people through a combination of spirituality and group therapy. Another non-single therapy is family therapy, which is advantageous in the fact that it strengthens the connections between family members by allowing them to express their feelings for each other. Okay, so that's it for this unit review for Unit 8, Clinical Psychology Treatment. We hope you found this helpful, and I'd like to announce that we have our visual episode on YouTube, and PsychCasts is also available on all other podcasting platforms. If you're watching this visually, please subscribe and like this video if you found it useful. Comment down below what unit review you would like us to do next. Additionally, if you're listening to the audio version, please give us a review so we can learn how to improve our content for you guys. Last but not least, we're on Instagram, so go follow us on @PsychCasts on Instagram. That's it from us, and we hope you'll tune in to our next episode. See you guys soon.